I always knew my family was a little off, but it wasn't until my dad passed away that I saw just how deep the cracks ran. The crazy part? It all started with a house. Not a mansion. Not some hidden fortune or secret treasure. Just a modest, two-bedroom house in a quiet part of Oregon. That house, and my father's last wish, tore my family apart piece by piece. Let me rewind for a second. I'm 28 now, but this story really begins when I was 25. My dad had just passed away after a long fight with heart disease. He wasn't perfect, but he was the rock of our family. My mom, on the other hand, had always been complicated. And by complicated, I mean unpredictable, manipulative, and constantly at odds with everyone, especially me. My younger sister, Haley, and I had spent most of our childhood walking on eggshells around her. But Dad had always been there to smooth things over. He loved her, maybe too much, always giving her the benefit of the doubt, even when she didn't deserve it. So when he passed, we all felt the ground shift. The glue that held things together was gone. And that's when the real story began. A few weeks after the funeral, I got a call from my dad's lawyer, Mr. Benton. He asked me to come in for the reading of the will. I assumed my mom would be there too, but surprisingly, she wasn't invited. That was the first red flag. When I sat down in the office, Mr. Benton looked at me like he was about to drop a bomb. "Your father left the house to you, Jason," he said. I blinked. "To me? Not to Mom." He nodded. "It's very clear. He amended the will 2 years ago. Your mother doesn't inherit anything directly. The house, his savings, and his personal belongings all go to you. He trusted you to make sure your sister was taken care of." I didn't know what to say. I felt honored, but also deeply uneasy. My mom was going to lose it. And I was right. When she found out, because of course she found out, she showed up at my apartment the next morning, fuming. "What kind of sick joke is this?" she barked, storming into my living room like she owned the place. "Your father would never leave me with nothing." "Mom, it's not a joke," I said carefully. "This is what he wanted." I didn't know until yesterday. She wasn't hearing any of it. "You think you're better than me? Is that it?" she hissed. "You think you're more deserving? After everything I've done for this family?" I stood there, stunned. "Mom, I didn't ask for any of this." She stared me down for a long time before turning on her heel and slamming the door on her way out. For a while, I hoped that would be the end of it. But that was just wishful thinking. 2 weeks later, I drove out to check on the house. It had been empty since Dad passed, and I was planning to start sorting through his things. But when I pulled into the driveway, I saw something that made my stomach drop. My mom's car was parked in front. I got out and walked up the steps, heart pounding. The front door was unlocked. Inside, she was sitting on the couch, watching TV like she lived there. "What are you doing here?" I asked. She didn't even look at me. "I'm moving back in." "No, you're not," I said, trying to stay calm. "You can't just take over the house. Dad left it to me." She laughed bitterly. "Don't be ridiculous. I lived here for 30 years. I'm not going anywhere." I wanted to yell. I wanted to tell her she was trespassing. But part of me still couldn't believe this was really happening. So I tried to reason with her. "We can talk about this, okay? Maybe we can figure something out, Al." "I don't need to talk," she snapped. "You've always been ungrateful. Always taking your father's side. Well, he's not here anymore. And you're not pushing me out of my own house." That was the moment I realized this wasn't going to be a civil conversation. It was going to be a war. And I wasn't ready for what came next. She didn't leave. The next day, I went back to the house with a printed copy of the will and the official keys the lawyer gave me. I figured, maybe if she saw it in black and white, she'd finally accept it. But nope. When I walked inside, she was sitting at the dining table, eating yogurt like she hadn't hijacked someone else's property. "Mom, please. Here's the will. It clearly says the house belongs to me. Dad made this decision himself." She didn't even look up. "You think a piece of paper means anything? I was his wife. This is my house." I gently placed the document in front of her. "This isn't up for debate. It's legal. It's done." She glanced at it, scoffed, and pushed it aside. "You don't understand what you're starting. If you think you can just take everything, you've got another thing coming." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I don't want to take anything. I just want to respect Dad's wishes." "He was sick," she said sharply. "He didn't know what he was doing. He changed the will 2 years ago, Mom. He knew exactly what he was doing." That's when she stood up. Her eyes narrowed, her voice cold and sharp. "If you keep pushing me, I'll make your life a living nightmare." I left the house shaking. I realized then this wasn't just a family disagreement. This was war. That evening, I called Mr. Benton, the lawyer. He told me I had every right to evict her, but it wasn't going to be quick. Since she had lived there for decades and was still listed at that address, we'd have to go through the courts. "You'll win in the end," he said, "but brace yourself. She's not going down quietly." So I filed the paperwork. I didn't want to, but I had no choice. In the meantime, I started going to the house during the day, trying to collect some of Dad's things. I wanted to preserve whatever pieces of him I could. But she started making that impossible. The first time, she hid the keys to the shed. The second time, she threw away a box of old photo albums I'd set aside. And then one day, I showed up and found the study, Dad's favorite room, where he read, wrote, and just enjoyed peace, completely gutted. All his books were gone. Furniture replaced. His old leather chair? Burned in the fireplace. I just stood there, stunned, as she walked in behind me. "What are you looking at?" she said flatly. "It's time to move on." That was his space, I whispered. Now it's mine, she replied, like it meant nothing. That was the moment I realized she wasn't just staying in the house, she was trying to erase him from it. While my lawyer worked on the court filings, I kept digging through the garage and attic, hoping to salvage what I could. That's when I found it, tucked in a box of old tools in the garage. A note, written by Dad. It wasn't addressed to me, but I knew it was meant for me to find eventually. If you're reading this, I'm gone. I know your mother will be furious, but I can't pretend anymore. I've seen too much, and I can't let it continue. I trust you. Take care of Haley. This house is my way of saying I saw everything. And I remember. I sat there on the cold garage floor, holding that note in my hands, feeling like I could finally breathe. He knew. All this time, he knew what she was like. And he left me this place, not just as a home, but as proof that he hadn't turned a blind eye. A few days after finding Dad's note, I got a call from the bank. It was a woman named Claudia from their legacy department. She said there was a safety deposit box under Dad's name, and I was listed as the sole beneficiary. I had no idea it even existed. You'll need to come in with ID and the death certificate, she said. But the box is yours. When I got there, Claudia led me to a private room, placed the metal box on the table, and handed me the key. Inside, a worn leather journal, a flash drive, and a small stack of envelopes, each labeled in my dad's handwriting. One of them was addressed simply, for Haley. I didn't open it. I knew that was for her to read when she was ready. But the others, they told a story I never expected. The journal was filled with entries dating back over 10 years. Dad had been writing down everything: fights, strange behaviors, things Mom had done or said that raised red flags. One entry from 2015 stood out. She threatened Jason today. Said if he didn't get in line, she'd cut him off. He's 18. He doesn't deserve that. Another. Caught her going through my medical records. I think she was looking for a way to contest my will. I've already updated it. Benton has the copy. But the most chilling entry? If anything happens to me that feels off, look into her finances. I'm not accusing. I'm just being cautious. That line hit like a freight train. Had he suspected more than emotional abuse? The flash drive held voice memos. Dad had been documenting conversations with Mom. One of them started mid-argument. Dad, you can't talk to Haley like that. She's a child. Mom, you're soft. That's why she walks all over you. Dad, you're scaring her. Mom, good. Let her be scared. Maybe then she'll listen. I had to pause the file. My stomach turned. Another recording was worse. It was just a quiet conversation with Dad and Haley. She sounded scared, maybe 14 at the time. Haley, can I stay with you more? I don't like when she gets mad. Dad, you're always welcome with me, baby girl. I'll make sure of it. Haley, she said if I told anyone, she'd send me away. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And at the same time, I could. It explained everything. The tension. The fear in Haley's eyes growing up. Why did change the will? Why he never confronted Mom directly, because he was protecting us in the only way he could. I called Benton again. We may have more than just a property dispute here, I told him. There's evidence, real evidence, of emotional abuse. Maybe worse. He asked me to bring everything in. He said we might need to involve child welfare, even retroactively, to protect Haley and ensure the court understood the context. Haley was only 17 at the time, still a minor. She had been quiet through all of this, living with her best friend's family ever since Dad's funeral. I hadn't wanted to drag her into the mess too early, but now I had to. I met her at a diner we used to go to with Dad. Just the two of us in a corner booth, with milkshakes and fries we barely touched. I found something, I said gently. From Dad. He left you a letter. It's private, but I thought you should know. Her hands trembled as she took the envelope. She didn't open it right away. Mom's trying to take the house, I added. But there's more. A lot more. Dad wrote everything down. He knew what was happening. Haley's eyes filled with tears. She nodded slowly. I used to think maybe I imagined it all, she whispered. But he knew. He really knew. She finally opened the letter at the table. I didn't read over her shoulder, but I saw her expression change, like the weight she'd carried for years had finally been named. When she finished, she folded the letter carefully and put it in her purse. I want to help, she said. I'm ready now. I squeezed her hand. Then let's do this together. The legal process was slow, painfully slow, but we were making progress. With the journal entries, the flash drive, and Haley's willingness to speak up, my lawyer said we had a strong case, not just to evict Mom, but to present a broader narrative of why Dad left the house to me in the first place. Still, I was nervous. Court isn't just about the truth. It's about what you can prove and how convincingly you can do it. But then came the twist no one expected. A few days before our first court hearing, my lawyer got an anonymous envelope in the mail. No return address, just a typed message and a few pieces of paper. The note said, "You don't know half of what she's done. Start with her finances. Look at the money that disappeared in 2018. She's hiding more than you think." Attached were screenshots of old bank transfers, large sums, moved in and out of different accounts, some tied to a business name I didn't recognize. They were in Mom's name, but none of them were familiar to me. I sent them to Benton immediately. He called me back 30 minutes later, sounding more serious than I'd ever heard him. These aren't just shady. They might be criminal. If your father's estate was involved in any of these transfers, it changes everything. Over the next 2 days, my lawyer filed a motion to subpoena Mom's financial records. And that was when the panic began. Mom called me 4 times in one night, then showed up outside my apartment the next morning. "Jason, we need to talk," she said, trying to sound calm, like she hadn't been ignoring every boundary I set since the funeral. "I don't think that's a good idea," I said, not opening the door. "I just want to fix things," she said through the screen. "We're family. We shouldn't let lawyers get in the way." I almost laughed. Now she wanted to be civil? "You had your chance," I said. "You could have walked away. But you made this ugly." Her voice dropped to a cold whisper. "You're making a mistake." "No," I replied. "I'm correcting one." She didn't come back after that. Then came the court date. The hearing was about the eviction, technically just a dispute over property ownership. But when Benton presented the evidence, Dad's will, the journal, the flash drive recordings, and Haley's letter, the tone of the courtroom shifted. And then Haley spoke. She was nervous, her voice shaking at first, but once she started telling her truth, it was like a dam broke. She described years of emotional manipulation, being isolated, controlled, gaslight. "She used to tell me that if I didn't act perfect in front of people, they'd think something was wrong with me," Haley said. "She made me feel like I was broken." The judge asked if there was any history of therapy or intervention. "I was too scared to tell anyone," Haley replied. "I thought no one would believe me. But my dad knew. He protected me the only way he could." You could feel the entire courtroom shift. Even the opposing attorney stopped taking notes for a second. When Mom took the stand, she was calm at first, too calm. She claimed Haley was an overly sensitive child, and that Dad had been manipulated by his son, meaning me, into changing the will. But then she made a mistake. She slipped and mentioned a private recording Dad had made, one that hadn't been played in court yet. That was our moment. Benton stood up. "How did you know about that recording, Ms. Reynolds?" "It was stored in a locked deposit box, not shared with anyone until today." Mom froze, and that's when the judge said, "We're going to take a recess. When we return, I want to hear more about these financial documents and the testimony regarding abuse." During the break, I looked over at Haley. She was pale but steady. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded. "Better than I've been in a long time." We both knew that whatever happened next, we'd already crossed a line we could never go back from. But maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. We were telling the truth. And the truth finally had a voice. After the first court session, things escalated fast. The judge ordered a full audit of Mom's financials going back 5 years. Benton and his team worked overtime, digging through layers of bank statements, shell company records, and business filings. What they found made my stomach turn. Turns out, Mom had been funneling money, Dad's money, into a fake consulting business that didn't actually exist. It had a name, a logo, and even a website, but no clients, no revenue, and no purpose except to move money around quietly. Over $80,000 was transferred out of Dad's accounts in small chunks over the course of 3 years. When Benton showed me the spreadsheet, I just stared at it. "She was stealing from him," I said. "And he knew." "She likely didn't think he'd catch on," Benton replied. "But from what you've shown me in his journal, he absolutely did." But that wasn't the only surprise. One of Benton's associates managed to trace a payment from that fake business account to a man named Carl Jensen, who had served a short sentence for fraud back in the early 2000s. When we found an old photo of him, he was in one of our family photos. I remembered him now, Uncle Carl. Not a real uncle. Just some guy who used to show up at backyard barbecues when I was a kid. He disappeared when I was around 10. I never thought twice about it. Benton called in a favor with a private investigator. A week later, we had the full story. Carl wasn't just an old friend. He was Mom's ex. Not before Dad, during. They'd been involved off and on, secretly, for years. Carl had helped her set up the fake business. He'd even signed some of the paperwork. And here's the kicker. A few months before Dad changed the will, he found out. That explained the shift. That explained the coldness that had grown between them during Dad's final years. He didn't just feel betrayed. He knew he'd been lied to, robbed, by the person he trusted the most. And somehow, even as his health failed, he still had the strength to protect us. We added everything to the case. The financial records. Carl's file. The paper trail. The judge allowed it as evidence. And Mom? She cracked. At the next hearing, her attorney asked for a recess before things even started. 10 minutes later, he returned and requested to settle privately. He wanted to avoid criminal charges. He offered to vacate the house immediately if we dropped the fraud complaint. But Benton wasn't having it. "Your client committed financial abuse and violated the terms of a will. That's not something we negotiate away." The judge agreed. And that's when Mom did the most unexpected thing of all. She stood up, right there in court, and said, "Fine. You want to know the truth? I took the money. I deserved it. I gave that man 30 years of my life, and he left me with nothing. You think that's fair?" The courtroom fell silent. The judge stared at her. What you just admitted could carry serious consequences. She didn't care. She just sat back down like it didn't matter anymore. A week later, she was formally charged with financial misconduct and breach of fiduciary duty. While the criminal case worked its way through the system, the civil court ruled in our favor. The house was officially mine. But by then, it didn't feel like a victory. Not exactly. The home where we grew up, where Dad tried so hard to build a safe life for us, now felt haunted by everything we'd learned. The walls had heard too much, seen too much. So Haley and I sat down together and made a decision. We should sell it, she said. Start fresh. Somewhere Dad would have wanted us to be happy. I nodded. Yeah, somewhere without ghosts. We put the house on the market the next month. It sold faster than we expected. Apparently, people loved the area, and no one asked too many questions. I used my portion of the money to buy a small place out in the suburbs. Quiet, peaceful, nothing fancy. Haley used hers to go to college. She'd always dreamed of being a teacher, and now she finally had a shot. One final surprise came in the mail a few weeks later. It was another envelope from the bank. Apparently, there had been a second safety deposit box under Dad's name, one they'd missed during the original search. Inside was just a single item. A photo of me, Haley, and Dad on the front porch of the house. Behind it, written in his handwriting. You'll know when it's time to let it go. Love always, Dad. After the dust settled, life started to feel normal again, whatever normal meant after everything we'd been through. Haley moved in with me temporarily while preparing for college. The energy in the house was different, peaceful. She laughed more, slept better. The dark cloud that used to hang over her head had finally started to lift. But then, just when we thought we'd seen the last of it, another twist showed up, literally, in the mailbox. It was a letter from our grandmother, my dad's mom. We hadn't spoken to her in years. She lived in Montana, far from all the drama, and had gone mostly off-grid since Dad passed. She'd heard what happened, Mom's arrest, the will, everything. And she said there was one more thing we needed to know. A truth that Dad had kept from us. Something that could fill in the last missing piece. The letter ended with a line that sent chills down my spine. There's a reason your mother was always afraid of losing control, and it has nothing to do with the house. I called her the next day. She sounded older, weaker than I remembered, but still sharp. Your father was protecting you from more than just emotional harm, she said. He believed your mother was involved in something years ago, something dangerous. What do you mean? I asked. There was a fire, Jason. In 2006. Your dad never believed it was an accident. I went still. I remembered that fire. I was 9. It started in the garage late one night. The damage wasn't catastrophic, but we had to stay in a hotel for weeks. The fire department said it was an electrical issue. Case closed. But Grandma said Dad never bought that explanation. He thought Mom started it intentionally, trying to get insurance money. She was behind on bills, Grandma said. The mortgage, utilities, even credit cards in his name. But the claim was denied. Something about inconsistencies. After that, she changed. Became more secretive, more controlling. I didn't want to believe it. But after everything we'd uncovered, it made a sick kind of sense. That fire, the money problems, the fake consulting business. Carl, all of it was connected by a thread of control, manipulation, and desperation. Grandma had more. She said she'd send copies of old letters Dad wrote to her after the fire. Letters where he poured out his doubts, his fears, and how he wanted to get us out, but didn't know how. That's what broke me. Even while he was alive, he was fighting a silent battle. And we never knew. Mom's sentencing came 2 weeks later. She didn't get jail time, just probation, community service, and full restitution. Honestly, I was surprised. But Benton said it wasn't unusual, especially since it was a first offense and involved family. She was also barred from contacting Haley or me directly for 5 years. The court called it protective distancing. It didn't feel like enough, but it was something. That night, Haley and I sat on the back porch of the new place. It was quiet out there, just crickets, a soft breeze, and the occasional sound of cars far off in the distance. She asked, "Do you think Dad would be proud of how we handled it?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "I think he'd be heartbroken that we had to. But yeah, I think he'd be proud." She smiled at that. As time passed, we both started healing. I got a job offer in Portland and moved out there. Haley finished her first semester with a 3.9 GPA. She's studying psychology now. Says she wants to help kids who went through what we did. And every year on Dad's birthday, we meet up, no matter where we are. We light a candle, share a meal, and tell a story about him we've never told each other before. We still miss him. Every day. But we carry high,